Guys around the world and the great beyond, welcome back to the Schtuff podcast. Once again, I am your host, Anthony Claiborne, joined by...
I am your other host, Jonathan Espy from the middle of nowhere, Thailand. And this morning or this afternoon, this evening, whatever time you were watching this thing, we have an amazing guest today. And I'm not going to say anything about him yet. I'm going to let Mr. Anthony finish his stuff, and then I'll introduce him up in here. But you may can see his face on the thing. We're going to hide it. We'll hide his face a little bit there.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see all three of us, like the Brady Bunch, had a split. But you have found the Schtuff podcast where we just want to get real, gang. We just want to have conversation with men who are living life, loving Jesus, who are real, and who are manly men. We want to encourage. Yes, we want to encourage legit biblical manliness. So we're excited to have John Correia with us today of Active Self-Protection, and my good friend John Espy and him, they go back away, so I'm gonna let him introduce him, and then we're just gonna jump into this thing, guys. We're just gonna roll.
Man, we are so excited, John, to have you this evening. And man, I'm gonna try to touch a little bit to tell all you guys out there who don't know who John Correia is. If you've been on a rock for the past, 5, 6, 7 years and have no interest in protecting yourself at all, you may not know who he is. But if you have any of those things, then you'll know who John Correia is. But just in case, I'll let you know who he is. He is the founder of Active Self-Protection, which is an amazing self-defense program and company, and just does amazing things to help people keep themselves safe all over the world. Some of you probably don't know my ministry, but we use his material all the time in the ministry that we do. It's great things. Just a couple things from his qualifications to let you know he is legit. He is a range master, certified pistol instructor, certified advanced pistol instructor, certified firearms instructor, perfect shooter qualifications for the FBI range master qualification. He's a Sig Sauer Academy semi-automatic pistol instructor, NRA instructor, shootingperformance.com firearm instructor, state of Arizona certified armed guard instructor. This like instructor. If you have a gun,
he is bona fide.
This cracker can teach you some stuff of how to stay alive and shoot that thing. Also, he's not only just a pew guy, he's actually a hand-to-hand guy as well. That's how we got connected up, and we got connected and started doing some training together. You are now a second-degree black belt, is that correct? Under UMass, right?
UMass is what we call it. Yeah, Universal Martial Arts Sciences. Yeah.
Oh,
it's a derivative of paintball.
There you go. And I'm particularly proud of him because about a year ago, about a year ago, this joker jumped in to the BJJ, and I'm like so excited about it. It makes me happy. It makes me tingle in my inside spots that my boy has jumped into some BJJ, and I'm loving it.
I had to, man. I mean, we've got a world champion teaching jiu-jitsu at our school, and I was like, dude, I've done this for 13 years. Let me go roll that for a year and see what happens, and I'm having a good time. I mean, not right now because of the Rona, but whatever.
Oh man, Rona has got us all down.
Dang you.
Oh, Rona. I'm telling you, like, I haven't got to roll in a while, and I've just been rolling in the kitchen. They're going to roll me to the mats to get on the mats because I've just been eating like a mule, man.
Well, my question, John, is if you're not able to roll, are you using this opportunity to actually wash your geese?
Man, once a week is enough.
Once a week's enough.
It's not filthy. Once a week's enough, man. I hang it in the sun. Suns are disinfected. Get up off me, yo. Get up off me.
See, when you primarily roll no-gi like I do, you can just Febreze that crap.
Oh, that's even worse.
Shake it out.
That's nasty. John, also, I have to give him props. Even though he was in the military, he was in the Navy, and I will have to say I have to give him props. Even though he was in the Navy, I was Marine Corps, but I have to give him props. He at least stood up and joined the Navy, and so I'm happy to call him my brother or sister in arms, however you want to call it.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
I love you, bro. I love you, man. I love you.
Hey, man, I get it. I love Uncle Sam's misguided children.
Exactly.
They just are so much more easy to handle than the Dobermans. So you got to have somebody around for security. I mean,
You need to. You got to have somebody, and you need a jarhead when you need a jarhead.
It's right. It's 100% true.
That's fantastic.
Well, yeah, man. And so me and John, like I said, we've gone back a few years now, and he's just been a blessing to me and my heart and my family and my ministry. And we're just so excited, man. We thank you so much for just blessing us to come on this thing with us to talk about, man, as guys, how to be godly men and being men as defenders. What does that look like? What is the biblical mandate, I guess you could say, for guys, for men to stand up and protect their families, protect those that can't protect themselves. And so we're going to thank you for coming on and let us just kind of chat with you today, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Probably the one that you didn't mention there. I mean, yeah, so I've got all the self-defense bona fides, but I also pastored a church for 14 years. And my formal education, I have a master's of divinity and biblical communication from Phoenix Seminary and about a half a doctorate. So yeah, man, it's a weird world that the Lord has put me in, and I'm glad to be here with you guys. So it's an odd thing. I never planned on being a YouTube celebrity, but that is real. You know, getting recognized at Costco is odd, but happens on the reg.
Anthony, let me tell you the story. Let me tell you the story, man. I'll tell Anthony the story, man. It's my like, I don't know what it is. It makes me giddy inside. I don't know why. So I'm hanging out with John up in Arizona. What's September? I don't know, a few months back. Yeah. And so we're going and
in the before times.
It's before times. It's before Rona. Exactly. And so we're like walking in these places, and then people would stop and be like, "Hey, John, are you John Correia for Active Self-Protection? Can I take a picture with you?" And I was like, oh, it's made me like my heart happy. It made me feel like I was somebody being next to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was important. I was like,
his Batman. Is that what you're telling
me? Exactly. I felt like Robin.
That's fantastic. Well, what's crazy, like the years I was a teacher, used to, you always ask kids, you're like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I'd have these kids tell me, they're like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. And I'm like, that's not a real job. I stand corrected. So to any guys out there listening to me that I ever said, you cannot be a YouTuber, I apologize, because we have one on the show today. So my bad, guys. Job. I'm sorry.
And I think sometimes people want to be a YouTuber because they say, oh, it's going to be easy money. I work about 65 hours a week, just so you know.
But so you can do it with no pants on most of the time. So that is a good trade-off.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah. Which is always a plus. In fact, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. So I'm wearing pants. I promise. So, again, thanks for being with us, John. We are truly humbled that you are willing to come hang out with us. This is literally, if you're listening to this, just the second episode ever of Guy Schtuff podcast. And to have someone of your caliber come hang out with us, see what I did there? A little gun joke. Anyway, to come hang out with us, a little gun humor, come hang out and spend time with us. It means a lot to us. And so I want to start, if we can, I just want to take folks back a little bit, because we do want to express that we are definitely trying to, as we build better men, help them understand that through Christ, being a Jesus follower is really the cornerstone of that. So we covered a lot in your bio, and you even mentioned that you had been a pastor for 14 years, which actually this homie here hadn't even told me that. I didn't know that until you told me that. So John Espy's holding out on me. He's holding back information. But take us back. We want to go all the way back first to your childhood. What was Lil John like as a child? What was there anything in your childhood that maybe prepared you, that God was using to get you ready for this particular kind of interesting and unique ministry like ASP?
I had in many ways a very typical childhood, but maybe a different slant than some. I did not grow up in a believing household. My parents are secular folk. My grandma was a faithful practicing Catholic her whole life, and my mom divorced when I was like 6 months old. She divorced my father because, he would sleep with anything that walked, and so she got tired of that. And so we grew up in my grandparents' home, and for the first 6 years of my life. And my grandpa, a World War II veteran Marine, kind of acted as a father to me. My grandpa actually served under Chesty. So, first Marine Division, wounded in the assault on Peleliu, had the tats, to prove it and all those things, like a Marine's Marine. And but a kind and generous man, and was supposed to die on Peleliu and then wouldn't. And so I went on to help invent the VCR and help raise me and my sister and my cousin when we were little. So lived in my grandparents' house, and some of my earliest memories are being with grandma. She used to volunteer in the rectory of her Catholic church, and that was a good thing for me. I just remember Sister Catrice and Father Cottrell being good people, and loving me. And in fact, when my grandma passed away in 2001, Father Cottrell came out of retirement to officiate her funeral. So that was pretty cool. But then my mom got remarried when I was 6 and married my dad, the man who I called dad, and he adopted me when I was 8 officially. And I took his last name. So my last name, Correia, is actually an adopted name. It's Portuguese. I'm not Portuguese. I'm ethnically, I'm kind of a Northern European mutt, an Anglo-Saxon Viking, pretty much. And but legally, I'm Hispanic. Such to the place when I joined the Navy, I had to claim Hispanic descent, which is kind of funny because my dad, when he adopted me, he's on my birth certificate, right? So it says my father on my birth certificate says Don Correia, and his ethnicity is Portuguese. So they're like, "Oh, you're Hispanic. Portuguese is Hispanic." And I'm like, "Wait, guys, I'm not really Hispanic." And they're like, "No, you are." Of course, help their demographics, whatever. So, so we grew up when Mom married Dad, and we moved in with Dad. My dad is a good man, and he raised me. I've never felt like I was his stepson ever. He has been my father. He's my dad. Gave me his character. Didn't give me his genes, but gave me his character, and raised me well. We worshiped mostly the San Francisco 49ers and Joe Montana in particular, and the church, I met every Monday night, the Church of Al Frank and Dan. And so, that's kind of how my upbringing was. It was very secular. We never went to church, none of that stuff, but we were raised to be good, sane, sober, moral people. And, and that was most of my upbringing. And I don't know why I ended up kind of adopting Mom and Dad's values that way. I was always kind of conservative, always kind of yay America. I think that comes from my grandparents and the upbringing that we had there. And, that I was taught to be respectful and to appreciate what I had. We grew up very, I would say, upper middle class in the San Francisco Bay Area, and didn't grow up around firearms at all. Really, my dad had a hunting shotgun that I never touched. That was his, not mine. So yeah, that was kind of my upbringing.
I want to hit on one thing that you mentioned, John, that I think, is super important to your story. Again, we're trying to help build better men, and your father, the world would call your stepfather, but actually your father. What an amazing story there, that he stepped up and adopted you and made you his own.
Oh, it's very clear, man, that to me, when I became a Christian at 22, that adoption, when God speaks of adoption in Scripture, that just, I knew every bit of that. And that one to me, like a lot of people have to detach their view of God as Father from their view of Dad, because Dad maybe is a troubling thing for them. But because my adopted dad, Don, loved me, then I picked up that adoption and went, yay, thank you. That speaks to my soul.
So John, man, just a quick question. At what point did you get really interested in like martial arts and self-protection? Like what was that kind of event for you? Or was there other things that you had in mind that you kind of wanted to go do but then turned toward martial arts? Like what was the process for you?
It was an interesting thing because, like I say, I grew up around guns some. My grandpa, taught me how to shoot when I was a kid. And my other grandpa, in fact, this is a weird thing. I mentioned that my mom divorced my father he was out of the picture, but his parents never were out of the picture. So his parents were very close to us. So I had 3 sets of grandparents growing up. It's a weird childhood, but it worked. And that
Make
grandpa
fun,
also, right? What's that?
Make Christmas fun, man. Triple.
Yeah, man. I mean, we got all kinds of Christmas presents, birthday presents. It was great. And that grandpa, who also was a Marine, and he was an absolute Uncle Sam's misguided child, crayon eating leatherneck. Like that was that grandpa for sure.
The best kind.
Yeah, the best kind, right? And got out of the Marine Corps pretty quick. And anyways, he taught me how to shoot as a kid and those things. But he passed away when I was like 18. And I didn't really have a whole lot of interest there. Joined the military, did 8 years, well, almost 8 years, like 7.5 years in the Navy. And of course, man, look, in the Navy, we don't mess with guns or self-defense and all those things. People be like, hey, did you learn Kung Fu moves in the Navy? I was like, come on, the shit. If it comes down to hand-to-hand skills, we got trouble.
Things have went awry. Things have went really awry.
Yeah, I'm on an aircraft carrier, man. By that point, we got crazy trouble. Like, imagine a bunch of nukes, and nukes are a bunch of wussies too, man. They're a bunch of freaking pencil neck geeks, you know? Oh, stop it. Right? Yeah, it would have been bad. So none of that stuff. Really, I mean, you know this, John, that when you're active duty military, like owning personally owned guns is such a pain because, you know, you go state to state and you don't know which state you're going to be in, and getting them on base is always a pain, or was a pain in a pre-9/11 world for sure.
Dude, I will tell you, I trafficked some weapons allegedly through the state of New York, trying to come from North Carolina, from Jacksonville up to Canada. Almost got him in Canada. Almost got them jokers there. But they kept them at the border. And they're like, oh, just check it. You go across the border. When you come back, we'll have it for you. I'm like, all right, cool deal. Come back through New York. And they're like, I'm like, here, I need to pick up my weapon. And they're like, do you have a permit? I'm like, no, man, I'm just driving through this thing. You can't have a weapon in the state of New York. I'm like,
actually, you could wear federal transport laws, but you know, fighting for it could be hard.
Yeah, I was like, and so it come down to this moment of, that's my papa's pistol. If you keep that, me and you gonna have some issues. I mean, you may get me on the end of it, but you gonna know you've been in a fight for it. But they relented and said, just get it and get out of here. I was like, bet. Trust me,
I'm gone.
Get out of your state.
Fantastic.
So anyway, so that was my
military you know, to my time in the military, I didn't do any of that stuff. And then I got out of the military. I became a Christ follower at 22 while I was an officer candidate in the Navy, and that's a whole story in and of itself. When I got out of the Navy, that was I was 98 when I became a Christian. I got out at the end of 2002, and moved to Phoenix to go to seminary, and started working retail management again to pay the bills while I was going to seminary, and then pastored a little church on the side for most of that. And it was while I was working retail management that the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 came out, and managers like, okay, so this is kind of like, you know, you got to think this is 2006. So, you know, the internet exists, but like Facebook wasn't even allowed for like most people in 06, right? You had to be a college student to get on Facebook in 2006. And eBay, the secondary market for Xboxes, was hot that year. And like people were selling an Xbox for like $1,000 online. And so managers were getting mugged for them and hurt for them. We had one manager in our company knifed for an Xbox 360. And I was like, not going to be me, man. So I lived in Arizona. Arizona is a shall issue state at the time. We are now even better than that. We're constitutional carry, but we were shall issue. So, and it coincided with me starting to work for my mentor at the seminary, who was a professor there, and he started paying me to teach some of his classes right at the end of my time as a student. And so I got just enough money to go take my CCW class and buy my first handgun. So I did. I bought the wrong gun. I loaded it with the wrong ammo. I put it in a bad holster and wore that. You're muted, John. I can't hear what you're saying, bro.
You didn't get like a 410 and like loaded with birdshot and buckshot back to back. You didn't do that's what you did.
Not quite that bad, but it wasn't perfect. That's for sure. Not quite that bad, but it wasn't great. And so got my permit, from the state, said I was competent. And about the same time, so that's when I started carrying in 06, and that got me interested in that. And then right at the same time, so we were homeschooling. We homeschooled for about 12 years. And my son, who was a little bitty guy at the time, and he was like 5, 6 years old, and he was taking karate at the local community center as his extracurricular activity, right? Well, sometimes God blesses you in ways that you just don't understand, right? Because there's an awful lot of community center karate that's pretty bad stuff, but James happened to luck out. Yeah, no, never. No. But James just happened, for the crazy reason, to be blessed to be in a class with the former full contact kickboxing, champ of the Southwest. Dude had 35 professional fights. That's, you remember, if you're an old school fan of the martial arts, like the old school full contact karate tournaments I used to do, like, this is not like modern stuff at all. Like when we're talking about full contact, this is like UFC 1 style, man. Like bare knuckles, face contact allowed. When one dude doesn't want to fight anymore, that's when it's over, kind of thing.
It's all like, Karate Kid 1, right? Like that was.
Yeah, it's dude straight up, but hardcore. But so anyways, he fell in with Lawrence Robinson, and he's like, Papa, come take karate with me. And I was like, dude, I'm busy. I'm going to school full time. I'm working full time. I'm pastoring part time. I'm way too busy for that. And he's like, what about when you get out of school? And I was like, okay, bud, pat. Like, yeah, we'll do that. And then a year goes by, and this kid is dead sick at my seminary graduation, like has strep throat, like barely awake. So we get done. I'm in my mortar board. I got my cape on. I'm feeling pretty good. I got my colors. I'm now the master of divinity. I pick him up and put him on my shoulder. He's like, I think, let's see, this was 2006. So kid's like 7 years old, right? I pick him up because he's sick, and he kind of picks his head up and he's like, congrats, Papa. I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And he goes, are you coming to class on Tuesday? And because I'd made him that promise a year earlier. And so I said yes. And I just planned to do it for 6 months just to have something to do with him. Oh, okay, cool. This is fun. It's something that'll keep me engaged after seminary. And here I am 14 years later, still training. It just fell in love with it.
It's like a fungus that gets in you, and you just don't let go, man. It's martial arts. Once you get a taste for it, I don't know if it's the first time you get to punch somebody really hard, or you get to like choke somebody. It's something about it draws you in, and you can't. I know for like most career martial artists or people that do it for their whole life, or at least for an extended period of time, man, there's something about it. It just draws you, and you can walk away from it for a little bit. It's kind of like the Holy Spirit. You can kind of walk away for a little bit, but He's gonna bring you back.
You're gonna come back. Well, it's weird, man, because sometimes it depends on the person. Like. I did the numbers with Professor Robinson, my teacher, and at 13 years of study, he gave me my second degree black belt, and I earned, however you want to say it, whatever, you know what I mean. And we figured out that among all of his students that he's ever taught, about 1 in 600 students persevered all the way to a black belt. Now that depends on. A black belt means nothing because it's all about a relationship between a student and instructor. Some arts, you in Taekwondo, a black belt isn't 18 months because of the way that their belting system works. And then you got to go to sashes and all those things, right? In our art, a black belt is a 10-year endeavor. And so it's not given, So it took me 10 years to earn my first degree, and then 3 more years to earn my second degree. So, and now we figured out that about 1 in 2,000 students that he's taught have gone to to that far to get a second degree black belt. So it's weird to me that watching as I've trained and seeing all the people that I kind of started with, and then most of them kind of, eventually fade away for whatever reason. And then, more folks come in, and then they kind of fade away, and then more folks come in, and some of them fade away. But the 3 or 4 that have been around that whole 13, 14 years, they're family, man. They're like this. And then when you catch that bug, you're like that, John. You've got multiple ranks in multiple different arts, and just a little bit, right? And it just, for those that it gets in your soul, that's why I love to go roll, man. I go hit the mat, and it's like, man, I got to learn something today, and I'm gonna get choked up You know, I'm gonna get tapped, napped, and snapped a whole bunch. You know.
Oh, so speaking of which, just another little side story that always happens when I'm around John and in John's area. I went to their school and enrolled with their guys. Great guys, love the school, man. Solid Brazilian jiu-jitsu there. Great. Rolling with a cat, long roll, got done. Dude had me in Ezekiel. I try to fight through it and stuff. Got done, couldn't swallow. Couldn't swallow for like a whole day. I'm like, John, I can't swallow. I have to push my esophagus over to swallow. I'm like, maybe I'm just being like a wuss. Maybe I'm like, suck it up, John. Keep rolling. Keep going. So anyway, I fast forward a week and a half later. I get back to the state to Thailand. Still clicking. Still have to move my esophagus. Fast forward another 4 months later. Go get checked at the doctor. He's like, oh yeah, you broke your neck. You broke your bone that guards your vocal cords there.
You got to tap.
Good job,
sooner.
coaches.
Tap or snap. Okay, there's a reason.
Yeah, bro.
To say that.
Maybe tap earlier.
You know, I don't know.
I want to tap. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was broke. I'm like, oh. So yeah.
There's a parallel, man, that I'm listening to you talk, and it definitely, you know, martial arts definitely gets in you. Even to this day, I still go back to my home dojo where I started at 19 years old with this, you know, real legit guy who like trained in Japan. And, you know, like I was telling John yesterday, I think it was, I used to go do sword demos with this gentleman, and his sword that he would cut objects off of me with was a Japanese like officer sword. It had the guy's name on it, Lieutenant Tanaka. He would cut stuff off of me with that. But it gets in your system. And, you know, there have been points in my life I tried to walk away, and I always come back. So I think if you're a real, you understand what I'm saying, a real martial artist in the sense that it's really a part of your DNA, you always come back to it. Now there's an obvious place I'm going with that, just to kind of take a spiritual route a minute. You see people, you know, come to the dojo, come to the academy, come to the gym, and they're there for a while, and they're like, I mean, they're all about it, right? They got their own everything. They got their own bag with their name monogrammed on it in Japanese or whatever, you know, or if it's BJJ, they're like suddenly they start talking and they take on a Brazilian accent.
Start drinking acai juice.
Yes, exactly, man. And like, yes, they got like,
hey, my friend.
I only drink pure coconut water, but you know, but then they fade and disappear. And we as men, I feel like maybe struggle with that probably more than ladies do. And there's a spiritual application. You know, we see it in church too. A lot of times folks will come on and they'll get super jazzed and excited about Jesus, and for whatever reason, guys will walk away. And I've got a very important question I'm going to ask you in a minute, but I didn't want to miss that. So as a pastor, as a pastor, what do you think makes a difference between a man who will stay the course and walk with Jesus till the day he dies versus those who walk away without getting into the deep theology, you know, just kind of laying it out there for our guys?
You know, I think the Christian life is learning every day to trust again, you know? And I always say, you know, every day you got to wake up and choose, do I trust Jesus enough today to do the next right thing? And for some guys, you know, Jesus talks about this in the parable of the soils, and we can get into the theology of that and how many of the soils are saved and all that stuff. I always tell people, look, if you profess Christ, I trust you with that, but it doesn't mean I trust you with my life. Because my brothers, the ones who are the ones who I trust, are the ones who stay in the battle with me, who don't walk away when things are hard. And that's that same thing really in the martial arts school, right? So a new student will come and I'm welcoming, like, man, I'm so glad you're here. Like, hey, let's train and let me help you. Or you see a guy come in and spot in from another gym, and maybe he shows up with a purple belt and an unwillingness to tap or something like that. You know, and
looking at you, John SB.
Why are you looking at me, man? Why are you looking at me, man?
Shade, throwing shade.
But you know, and you have fun with that. So like, I mean, straight up, like, okay, I will be real. Like when we right now at jiu-jitsu, like when I show up at school, I trust these guys, right, and gals. Like when they show up, I know they're not going to hurt me, but they're going to push me. They're not gonna let me get into a spot where I'm going to get injured, even though, you know, it's jiu-jitsu, you're going to get injured. But but they're not going to hurt me. But when I go somewhere else, I don't have that trust necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the ones who've been around a long time, those are the folks that I trust. So what is it that makes somebody do that? Gosh, I wish I knew, man. I wish I knew the magic formula. I think it's just a willingness to surrender to God today. I feel like spiritual transformation happens when we combine openness to God changing us with the truth of God and God's truth as he's revealed himself, and a community around us who supports us in that endeavor and helps us see the way. So truth, community, and openness are the kind of and where I find all of those, I find spiritual transformation and growth. And it's the guys and gals who go to that process every day. And I'm going to trust Jesus enough to do the next right thing today that make it long term. Just like in the school, like who ends up with the black belt? It's not somebody who's got crazy physical attributes. It's not somebody that it's the person who goes, I'm just going to show up to class again. I'm just going to show up again and do my work. I'm just going to show up again and listen and try to get better. So I guess the real difference is a willingness to continue to show up.
I love it. I love that.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things that like you kind of touched on. It was really clicks for me too. And I think especially with men, right, with guys, we gotta have. And we talked about this last episode. This tribe, we have to have. If you want to stay somewhere, you have to have this tribe where you're open to be. I hate the word vulnerable, but you have to be open to say, man, to trust other guys with your dark secrets, with who you really are inside when nobody else is looking. That has to be something that's there, I think, for guys to connect and stay something long term.
John, I'm going to challenge you on a word here.
Okay, go ahead.
I hate the word vulnerable. Let's put it. But let's put it in jiu-jitsu terms, right? Yeah. So I close up guard on somebody, and I'm super not vulnerable right now, right? So I got collar grips, whatever. I'm just going to sit here like this. But anytime I'm going to make progress, if I'm going to progress at all, I got to open up. Now that brings me some vulnerability because he can attack me and where my opening is.
I completely agree with him. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that word, at least in my mind and a lot of guys' mind, being vulnerable, like emotionally, sounds like some girl crap, like some women in the back trying to push you to do something. But I'm saying is that idea of and that's not a really better word I can think of other than being vulnerable.
Maybe? I mean, like
transparent open. Maybe? Yeah, maybe that's
I call it transparent authenticity. I gotta be real enough. And sometimes you gotta show the weak spot. You gotta say, guys, hey man, this is where I suck. I'm not very good at this. And for a guy to say I'm bad at something is it's hard, dude, because we want to be competent.
Exactly. And I think having a place, and I think the local church should be this, the men's group or the local church should be that place where you can be what's the word? The phrase you use. I really like that phrase.
Transparent and authentic. Right?
Transparently authentic. Where you go, this is how I'm struggling. This is what's wrong with me. This is where I'm screwing up. Man, do you guys feel that way? I know, like where I got freedom from a lot of addictions that I had and a lot of struggles that I had was when I got that unity with a bunch of dudes in my church and was just like, hey man, this is what I'm struggling with, and they were like, yeah, me too. And I was like, wait, I'm not the only pervert in here. Like, it's like one of those things where it was open then, and I was able to share that, and they knew my struggles, and I knew theirs, they knew mine, and I was able to receive love freely then. Does that make sense?
Sunlight is the best disinfectant, man.
Yeah,
exactly.
When you lay it out there, there's no more shame. You can't. You're like, okay, this is what's up. Now I can't. I'm not going to hide in the shadows anymore. Now here it is. Now Jesus can take that and heal it. So
exactly. I think guys tend to fight that. I'm sorry, man.
No. Go ahead. Well, they do fight it, and the reason I feel like we do partially is because there's this fear in the back of our minds that if John knows the worst about me, at some point, he potentially is going to use that quote, against me. He's gonna, and having, I spent years in ministry myself. I was a youth pastor, and I can tell you that in my own life, I didn't have anybody to talk to. Because
pastor especially, you don't.
Because I knew that if I told this person just how angry I was and how bitter I was, potentially that could be used against me. But that's the greatest weapon, probably the enemy. Obviously, the greatest weapon the enemy has against all of us is a lie. And he convinces us guys, I think, especially that you can't be open. And reality, if we become real and transparent and just own it, then even if they try to break it back out, it's like, yep, that's right. But you know what? Jesus delivered me of that. I was that. That dude is absolutely right. I was that, but Christ is delivering me of that.
Amen. Couldn't agree more.
So, kind of transitioning into the self-protection piece, John, as a self-protection professional, as a guy who, your main role is to help people with that. Now, I know there's an obvious, simple answer to this, but I'd like for you to expound on it for people and give them a good framework to work within. Do you see a scriptural, a biblical mandate for men to be ready to defend their family, others, and themselves with physical violence if necessary?
I mean, I think that there is. I think that maybe, I want to watch out because I think that we can fall off the pendulum here both ways. We fall off the balance beam here both ways because Jesusism is our example, our exemplar in all things at all times, right? And Jesus was a man of steel and velvet. He wasn't Mr. Rogers with a beard. He also was not a violent man.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Jesus was a very tender man and a very confident man. He could walk anywhere. I mean, but let's be real. When Jesus cleansed the temple and he made himself a whip in order to do so, why did that work? It worked because he threatened them with violence. This whip didn't come in. He didn't just go, hey guys, I'm going to show you a cool whip trick and that will make you leave. He's like, you jokers are leaving right now. You are out of this temple on my authority. And if you don't, violence is coming your way. Now, if you think that's not the case, why else would it have worked? He didn't go turn over the tables because he's like, hey guys, you want me to help you fold your table up so you can make sure you make it home on time? He's like, you're leaving. And they're like, no, we're not. And he goes, yoink, there goes your table. Next, it's you.
That's good.
And never forget the fact, okay, so that Jesus was capable of violence, but he wasn't a violent man, okay? And so we see some others. When we see our big exemplar, Jesus is the ultimate example. The next example we see there is King David, right? So Jesus being the son of David, that is one of his biggest titles. The son of David, the one who inherits the Davidic kingdom. And we go study the life of David, not a perfect man like Jesus. David, though, as well, a man who loved the Lord, a man whose character, apart from the Bathsheba thing, was strong. Sex got David too. But other than that,
get most dudes.
Yeah, I mean, it can get us all. If it can get King David, it can get you. And a man who definitely could do violence and could do violence from his youth and was good at it.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say he was good at it too.
Again, was good at it and didn't shy away from it. When I read, probably that biggest mandate against criminal violence is in Nehemiah. In Nehemiah, as the people rebuilt the walls around Jerusalem that had been torn down, Nehemiah had a mandate from the king to go and build the walls around Jerusalem again, reestablish the temple, and do good things. So he was acting within the law. But Sanballat and Tobiah, who were other rulers in the area, became lawbreakers by trying to stop that, what the king had said was okay. And Nehemiah's answer to that wasn't, go run and tell the king so that the king can protect us. He said, all of you put a sword on, every single one of you. I'm going to station you with your family inside the wall, and you're going to work while you're armed, and if a bad thing happens, you're responsible. Call, make a holler, and we'll come help. But you're responsible for defending your sector and defending your family. And of course, those to me say, all right, I'm not to be a man of violence in my soul. I think that that's in 1 Timothy 3 when we talk about the requirements for being an elder, that I think every man should strive to be qualified to serve as an overseer in their congregation, to love people there. Because really the qualifications is mature. Is grown up as a believer. But part of that is not prone to violence.
Mm.
So there's a legitimate use of violence, what we call pro-social applied violence. Okay, so there is violence that is a good to society, and then there's antisocial violence that is bad for our culture, for our society, for our families. Okay, and as a man, we should be ready to protect and defend our family. I think that we should always remember that it's never acceptable for us to use violence against our family and those who are in vulnerable places, right? I believe the only legitimate use of power is to defend the powerless and to protect those who don't have that power.
Amen.
And so, having that ability, I mean, I've been those as a pastor, the church has put up with a lot of abuse. And if I catch a man putting his hands on his wife because she don't listen or whatever, that's probably where I get angriest. I was raised, my grandpa, who my father's dad, man, he impressed upon me. You put a beating on a woman, I'm going to give you 3 times that beating every time you see it. I'll never forget when my grandpa, we were working construction. I'm like 14 years old. I worked for him in the summer times and on weekends. And this dude showed up, his wife dropped him off to work and she had sunglasses on, and you didn't need sunglasses on that early in the morning. And my grandpa's like, hey, what's going on with that? Like, we're all just getting out of the car or whatever. And she's like, what? I don't know. He goes, look, take your sunglasses off. And she did. And she had a mark on her face. And he literally just walked right over to her husband. And grandpa was a brawler. Okay. Gold gloves in the core. And he was a brawler. And, he punched that guy so hard in the face. I've never seen another man hit that hard in the face. I'm not joking. He hit that guy. Right. I mean, hard. I would listen now. Okay, quick backstory on that. I watched him. Let's see. I worked for him for like 6 years. In the 6 years I worked for him, I probably saw him get in 15 fistfights, 20 fistfights in that 6 years. Never saw him lose. One time, he'd lead with his face. So he'd put his hands down just so you'd punch him in the face, get your hands out of the way so he could hit you. He had a leading left hook that I saw him knock at least 3 guys out cold with a lead left hook. But if the left hook didn't get you, the straight right behind it was gonna. And I actually told the guy who was talking about, I'm tired of that guy, was doing some other work or way. I'm tired of that Hodges. I'm gonna whip his butt. And I looked at him. I said, hey, here's how it works. Ready? If you can last 2 minutes with Jim Hodges, you can beat him because he's 60 years old and you don't have no gas tank no more. But you will never last 2 minutes with Jim Hodges, and you will end up picking up teeth off the ground if you choose. I wouldn't do it, bro.
That's fantastic.
He decided he wanted to get a drink of that water, and he got a big drink of it and picked some teeth up.
He got
so anyways, he hit that guy. That one guy, he hit that guy 2 punches. He hit him bang, bang in the face, knocked him over. And of course, the guy was just like, what the heck? And Grandpa looked at him and said, never put your hands on your wife again. I ever catch you doing it again, I'm going to hit you 3 times as hard as you hit her. And I'm going to hit you 3 times as often. So get up and get to work. And didn't fire the guy. Like, okay, dude's like, bloody and his eyes all swell up and all that stuff. And I was like, what just happened? So anyways, all that to say, never use violence against those who God has put under your care. I mean, that's completely inappropriate and unacceptable. But to be ready to use enough violence to stop those who would do you harm, I think there's a biblical mandate there, and it's all over Scripture for sure.
Cool.
That's good.
Awesome, man. One of the questions we talked about is like, okay, there's a biblical mandate to do it. There's a biblical mandate to at least to protect your family, to protect those things, to protect yourself. At what point do you think it's time? When you've developed these skills, at what point do you think it's time to go, like to use these skills, to put these in practice? Where's the line of demarcation? Where should that be in most instances? Is it and does it kind of go to a strike first mentality, a preemptive strikes or preemptive actions, or is it completely defending? Like, what do you think is the best from what you've seen in most real world encounters? What's the best course of action and to take in a defensive situation?
So obviously you have to know the laws of the land that you live in and be willing, I think. So we would hope in a perfect society that moral and legal were 100% overlap, but that's not the case, right? That
good point.
There are plenty of immoral things that are illegal and plenty of moral things that are illegal. And so I think as a citizen, Romans 13 says, I have to be ready to pay the price if the state chooses to punish me for doing things, okay? I will drive too fast, right? So I've had a medical emergency and driven somebody to the hospital at an incredible speed, like ludicrous, stupid speed. that in any other place
Ludicrous.
that would, of course, send me to jail. And I said, I'm willing to go to jail right now if I have to, because this is more important. This moral thing I have to do is more important. And if they choose to arrest me and send me to jail, I'll take it. Like, okay, so same thing. If I have to defend my family and the state says I did bad, I have to be ready to take that. But I think the principle always exists, John. And what I say is, I am never an aggressive or violent person, but I do have a right. I learned this from Senior Grandmaster Skip Hancock, who is my teacher's teacher, that my simple attitude is no one has the right to harm me. I am a bearer of the image of God, and I am of inestimable value, worth, and dignity. So is all of my family, and no one has the right to harm me. No one has the right to take that from me. That is my boundary. As long as you are willing to live within that boundary, we're fine. But if you choose to violate that boundary, I will defend that boundary. So that means somebody wants to come and violate that boundary physically. Okay, so they want to, I'm tired of you. I'm going to punch you in the face. No, I'm going to stop that punch in the face. Yeah. Now you say, well, what does that mean? I think the principle is there that exists right there. I have the right to stop that. My skill set will determine how I can stop that. So I say, I am an imminent threat right now of that guy punching me in the face. Due to all my training, whatever, he's going to punch me in the face. Now, I mean, personally, I love tools. I'll pull out my OC spray and bless him with the jerk sauce. Go, buddy. Get out of here. Because I don't want to go hands-on with you if I don't have to. But if I have to, I will, right? Somebody swings a punch at me. I always tell people this all the time. If I put my hand in a blender, how does that hand come back? It comes back bloody and broken. Yeah, and I don't blame the blender for that. And I blame you being the idiot who stuck your hand in the blender. You put your hands on me, and guess what? You just put your hands in a blender. And don't blame me because they come back bloody and broken. That's on you, not on me. And in that same thing, if they, I meet physical force with physical force. I meet deadly force with deadly force, because that has to stop right now. So if I am an objective, reasonable threat of deadly force, that somebody means me or mine, I am in imminent danger of great bodily harm. They're going to put me in the hospital. They're going to mar me for life. They're going to harm one of my family and put them in the hospital or kill them. I will stop that instantly, and that is defined as deadly force. So that's where those get. Now, when we start talking about preemptive things, again, would a reasonable person, looking at all of the things, because again, one of the things that we should always strive for is that the wisdom that comes from above is reasonable, right? It's reasonable is one of the things that James says. Would a reasonable person in the circumstances that I am in, knowing what I know, say that, yes, that was a reasonable action. So for instance, you're a trained martial artist, you know all the pre-attack indicators, a guy who's doing some picks or whatever, he's got his hand in his pocket, won't show it to you, whatever, you know what all those look like. And you go, nope, I had every indication that guy was about to come after me with this thing. And so I took some preemptive action in order to prevent that. Then, okay, that's reasonable. Somebody else may not have that skill set, may not be reasonable for them.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So that really the idea would be prepared, and I think a way of saying it is, and you can agree or disagree with me on this, is to actually set that boundary in your mind before you even get there. Like you need to have that line of demarcation already set before you are well into any kind of altercation. If you don't have it, I think you're already behind the 8 ball. I think if you're doing that, would you agree with that, John, or not?
Totally. Well, that's what a boundary is, right? Here's the property line, right? And I set boundaries not just physically, but emotionally, relationally. Here's my boundary. Yeah. And if you push past my boundary, I'm going to push you back right outside my boundary. And that is my right to do. I really recommend reading Cloud and Townsend's book, Boundaries. It's a really good book. And now they talk about that from an emotional perspective and all those things, relational perspective, works physically as well. I tell people all the time, listen, man, you put your hands on me in anger in any capacity, somebody touches me or they threaten me in that way, they are going to get worse than they give. Okay. So, not that I can't have my butt kicked. Okay. So I'm not saying that at all. But at the very least, you're going to get something for that.
You will know I've been here. That's what you're saying.
Right, exactly. I'm not easy meat. So
yes.
I say all the time, I could be killed. Like I'm not invincible. But at the very end, at the very least, the guy's going to say, "Man, that guy was hard to kill." Whatever. So
that sounds like a movie title.
Right. So I think setting those boundaries in advance so that you know your go signals, then you don't have to think about them. is an important part of self-defense.
Definitely. Cool.
So we are talking again, if you're just kind of jumping on the podcast, we're talking with John Correia of Active Self-Protection. And just as a way of kind of bookending everything for our guys who are listening out there, as a self-protection professional, I'm going to give you kind of a two-parter here. Give us a few things that every man should know to be prepared to protect his family and those that are not able to defend themselves if he's called upon. That's the first part. And the second part is, should he also look at having his family trained to be prepared as well?
Yes. Okay. So two-part question there. First part, I think that when I talk about fitness, we talk about 5 fitnesses, right? So spiritual, emotional, mental, perceptual, and physical. Learned that from Professor Lawrence Robinson and Senior Grandmaster Skip Hancock. Okay, fine. So first and foremost is spiritual fitness, right? The first thing that every man needs to be is he needs to know that his relationship with Jesus is strong and that he is mature in Christ, that he is following the way of Jesus, not just trusting, not just believing in Jesus, okay, but following Jesus and becoming. I make a big distinction between being a Christian and being a follower of the way of Jesus. I want to be a follower of the way of Jesus. And so that spiritual fitness is first and foremost, and encouraging. You can't make, I mean, dude, you just said you have a 17-year-old daughter when we were talking offline. Yeah. I do too. You can't make a 17-year-old believe and do nothing. Okay. Yeah. You can make them sit their butt in church if you really want to, but at some point, I have 2 adult kids as well. My oldest is 22.
My oldest is 21, man. So
23 now. I kept saying 22, but last month she turned 23. So my oldest is 23. I have a 20-year-old, 17-year-old, 14-year-old. They get to be teenagers. You can't make them do nothing at some point.
Y'all some old people. I'm just saying. Y'all old, man. Y'all are old.
Man.
We
old.
How many kids you got? Seasoned.
Your oldest is older than mine.
Hush, man. That ain't nothing to do with it. I'm just saying. Y'all old. Y'all old.
So, yeah, I'm old. That's true. I got married at 19, so we started young. But that thing is then that gives pull. If you invest in your family as well, so part of spiritual fitness is investing in those relationships in your family as well, that they know that you love them, that you've left nothing unsaid, you've solved all the conflicts you can. And if they know you love them and you love Jesus, it's really hard to not love the people who love you and who they love. So that would be first and foremost. And then to be prepared from there, I think, should every man have some preparation to defend his family physically? I think so. I think it would be a good thing. Although I will say, in Luke chapter 22, everybody, a lot of believers love to go back to Luke 22:36 that are gun folk, right? Oh, Jesus said we shall have guns. And if you go to Luke 22, Jesus is talking to his disciples. He's about to be crucified. He says, hey, the last time I sent you guys out with nothing, did you lack anything? And they were like, nope. And he says, okay, so this time I'm going to send you out again, but I want you to take provisions for your journey. I want you to make sure you've got a belt and a knapsack and a money bag and shoes for your feet. And let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. Of course, that sword was a defensive implement. It's the Greek machaira, the Roman gladius. This is not a hunting implement. This is not a cooking tool. This is a self-defense tool, okay? Now, so a lot of folks are going to be like, yeah, you should own the guns. Okay, fine. I don't mind that. And I own plenty of guns, okay? But right after that, the apostles looked at him and said, well, Lord, we have 2. I mean, out of the 11 of us here, we got 2 of them. And he was like, all right, I mean, that's enough. Is literally what Jesus said. That's enough. Okay, and move forward. So not everybody has to be tooled up, but you do have to be ready to protect yourself and protect your family, however that works for you. Because, John, you're in Thailand. It's illegal for a Throng to own a firearm in Thailand.
Yes, it is.
I looked it up. It's only been a couple years that it's totally illegal for a Throng to own a firearm, but it is. It is.
So, illegal.
Right. But that doesn't mean you can't be tooled up in other ways. It doesn't mean that you can't, I love my martial arts training just because it tunes me to understand my body and understand my kinesthetic awareness and makes me healthier. It's a great workout. It does those things in a lot of ways. So yes, I think you do have a mandate. I think that to be spiritually fit first, and then just to do some work. Some work is better than no work, right? Like every little bit you do helps. And the biggest thing I tell people all the time is pay attention to your world. Like if you pay attention to your world and you know what the problems are before they get to you, it's like paying attention while you're driving a car, right? While you're driving a car, if you see a problem, you probably don't need incredible evasive driving maneuvers if you see the problem coming from a ways away. So same thing in self-defense. The second part of your question, should your family be trained up? I will go back to what I said a little earlier, that you can't make nobody do nothing. All right. Now, I did make my children do 3 years of martial arts training. Okay. Each of my children were required to do 3 years. Right. After that, they could go do what they wanted. Right. My son ended up doing 10 years and then only kind of quit when high school athletics got in his way. Started playing football and wrestling, and then he just ran out of time. My girls.
My kids,
What's that?
Sorry. I say my kids, the mandatory, I tell them all the time, if you living in my house, you eating my food, you're gonna be training. As you 18, you get your job, you can go, but you're gonna train until the day you may hate every day of it, but at 18 you can say I'm done, but you're gonna train till you're 18. So that's kind of our mandate.
Right. And I think that's totally fine. And I told my kids 3 years minimum, and that way you've got at least a little bit of something. Some did more, some did less. My son James is now a veteran, and he's kind of twiddling his thumbs right now. But I was talking with him. He's been doing rock climbing and all this other stuff and running. And I'm like, dude, you got to get you a jiu-jitsu gym out there. And he's like, I'm so excited for it. Came out and rolled with us a couple times when he was home.
That's
so that was fun. And
where's he at right now?
He's in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay. His wife, there's a lot of good schools out there too, man. There's a lot of good.
His wife's stationed.
Gustavo Machado's up that way. He needs to check out Gustavo Machado.
All right. His wife's still active duty Navy and stationed on Eisenhower, the Ike. Ooh. And so they're on deployment right now. She's out floating on the ocean and making hot water the hard way. And so, I do think that now with your wife, I want you to be real careful. Man, I'm not a big fan of forcing my wife to do nothing. Okay. Good. I don't force my wife. And I know, some people are going to get upset with me about this as a headship thing or whatever. To me, headship in a marriage means I am the first to go to Jesus. I lead us towards Christ.
That's good.
And
that's really good.
Christ loves his wife, and I'm called to love her like Christ loved the church. And Jesus never beats the church into submission. Jesus leads the church to God and to the things of God and to submit to him and live for him. So I say all the time, man, you could look at this 100 ways, but the Holy Spirit sounds like my wife an awful lot. She's a wise woman and she follows the Lord. And when she says, hey, I'm praying and I really feel like God is going this way. Well, if the Holy Spirit's talking to her and I admit that she's me and I'm her, right? So we're one. Then if he speaks to her, it's just like he speaks to me. It's literally the same thing. And so I better be super careful about going, no, I want to go this other way. Because now I'm training my wife to say, well, I don't care if God spoke to you. That's not God. I'm God. Yep. Right? It makes her worship me.
I can tell you, bro, in my life, John, both Johns, every single bad thing that has ever happened in my life was when I did not listen to the intuition that God was laying on my wife.
Oh, dude.
That she shared with me.
Dude. I've got that same story. So, when he says that, that the wives are a helpmeet to their husband, when we're talking in Genesis, right? That's that same word used of God coming to the aid of Israel. That is not, that's not a weak position.
Wait. She's supposed to be cooking me a sandwich, right? She's supposed to be fixing me sandwiches and with barefoot in the bread, right? That's what
you gotta find that sandwich somewhere you don't like it. So with self-defense, I never have made my wife do a thing, right? So I never made my wife come to class. She looks at me, she goes, wait, you go in a rashi and a pair of shorts and you snuggle with other men, other sweaty dudes. And I was like, yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, it's really fun. She's like, that is not fun. That has nothing to do with fun. And I'm like, no, it's really fun. You should do it. She's like, pass, thanks. And she's like, look, the only kind of time I want to be like rolling around with a sweaty man is during sexy time with you, and that's it.
So here's another little story that you like when you get real intimate having a dude, like people that don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and they're maybe looking at or don't do grappling, you get intimate with some dudes, man. You grow a bond that you wouldn't grow in normal places, and mostly because you get certain parts of people's physical anatomy rubbing off your lip like this a few times, and you're like, but you grow stronger. And so anyway, I digress.
I would say there is no other endeavor where I would have a man's balls
I was
literally on my face.
To say that. It's so funny because like if you pick some
trying to get out of a triangle and I got this dude's nuts on
exactly. Some random guy off the street, I'm not going to put in between my legs and cross my feet around him. You know what I'm saying? There's not enough money you can pay me to do that. But get us on the mat, done.
Yeah. Some dude's taint on your freaking cheeks, and you're like, what happened here? Anyhow,
things have went awry.
Yeah, so I've never made my wife do a thing. I've encouraged her, and I've invited her. You know, hey, I'd love for you to come and be a part of that with me, dear. I've been married for 25 years in July, and I've been a self-defender for the last 14 of them.
Wow.
And my wife has just recently started carrying a firearm and training to get to a high standard. She just last month passed the FBI pistol qualification. She didn't need to do that for a permit or nothing. That's not a government thing. She just wanted to hold herself to that standard if she was going to carry. She passed it last month, and good for her on that. And so in inviting that and just welcoming that, then that leaves open doors for her, right? So with your kids, man, I love your way, John. I did for 3 years. You're like, nope, you live in my home, you train. Okay, fine. You know, my kids have some kind of unique stuff. There's some trauma in their lives that they're like, I don't think I want to do that. Okay, cool, I get it, whatever. And but your wife, I want you to be much more cautious with, because your job is to love her like Christ loved the church. And if that doesn't help her, then you be her protector.
And that's one of the things too. Like even as a husband leading their family, if your wife is like, you know what, I don't want to go into gyms with a lot of sweaty dudes, and because a lot of females are actually intimidated going into a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools and stuff. I mean, if you're training, man, bring it home to your wife. I know for the first 3 or 4 years of my martial arts, as an adult training, my wife was my test dummy. I'd go to class and come in and be like, hey, baby, let me show you this cool thing I learned. And she learned right along with me. And so that was one of the things that, even if your wife is not like gung-ho to go in there and get trained, some hand-to-hand training or whatever, I mean, you have some time with her. You can be the teacher. You can help her, in a loving way to come along to that if she's interested in doing that. And that's something that even with your kids or your family, you can be that that leader in that avenue, not only in your spiritual walk, which is the biggest thing, but even in your physical protection. Talk to your wife about it and see if she can follow you that way.
Every situation, I would say too, is unique. In our household, my 17-year-old daughter that we were talking about a while ago, for years I tried to get her to commit to a full-on program, study a specific arts. You're going to do this, baby, because I want you prepared. You're going to college one day and I want you prepared. And it did not work. It did. But MMA, she has fallen in love with MMA. So we've turned our garage, and we're doing more and more to turn it into a training space. But she's all about striking and some dirty boxing and a little bit of grappling, but for her to go long term with it and say, I want you to even earn your first belt, it's probably not going to happen. My son, interestingly, is more attracted to more of the traditional martial arts that we've done in the past. He's got a smattering of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but that's not really his thing as much as the other stuff is. And my wife has some unique health challenges, so it's be tough for her. Although I do jokingly tell her all the time, honey, you need your concealed carry permit. But she's down with that. She wants it. And when the road is over, that's going to be one of the first things we do. I live in North Kakalaki.
North Kakalaki. I'll help you find a right guy. The right
Beautiful.
trainer.
I will take you up on that. And John Espy, my friend, I'm going to kick it over to you to wrap things up, man, so we can allow our brother John C. to get back to his family. He's been gracious and giving his time today.
Well, yeah, man. John, we can't say thank you enough for just coming on and just letting us chat with you, talk with you, hang out with you. Man, it's been a blessing for me. It's a blessing just to get to see your face again, man. Like I hadn't seen
Right?
you in a
I
while,
love it.
man. It's like get to see your face, man. And we appreciate you coming on and helping us. As men defenders, thinking through that a little more. Think about what that kind of looks like. Some of the things that will help us in our spiritual walk, as well as in our physical walk of protecting ourselves and protecting our family. So we thank you, man, for giving us some clarity and helping us think through that and walk through it a little bit, man. We really appreciate you, John. For people that haven't heard of you, how can people get in contact with you and connect with you on social media and your channels and stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the big way you can get a hold of me is on our main YouTube channel. It's called Active Self-Protection. It's a big old snake. That snake comes from Matthew 10:16, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves.
Nice.
So you can find us there. Just go on your YouTube app and search Active Self-Protection. Actually, I have 2 channels there. One's called Active Self-Protection. The second one's called Active Self-Protection Extra. That's where I teach on the regular. You can find me there. Facebook page, same thing. Active Self-Protection. Instagrams, on the grams at Active Self-Protection.
On the grams.
Or I have a public figure page on Facebook as well. It is shockingly called John Correia. And
Wow.
Weird, right?
It works that well.
I post a daily devotion there as well. So I post
Nice.
daily devotional thoughts and insights from my own personal reading about following the way of Jesus there every day, and pictures of my cats. You can also follow me on my personal Instagram at Minister Malice. That is my good joking username. If you ever find Minister Malice on the web, it's me. So so that's my personal brand.
Sounds like a wrestler name. I was a minister.
It was made
Mr.
when I was
Malice.
working retail, actually, back in the day when I was working retail, and that's when I started doing martial arts. And so I started doing martial arts, started carrying a gun, was pastoring a church, finishing seminary, and that's when my employees, who are all gamer nerds and good dudes. In fact, I could tell a whole story about how the Holy Spirit, I had 6 employees at the time, and he blew through that whole store and converted, brought our 4 employees who didn't know Christ to faith in Christ. And it was a cool time. Anyways, they called me Minister Malice. They were like, dude, you're like the kung fu preacher, like, the pistol packing preacher. Like, and so then they worked on it for a while, and eventually like, you're like Minister Malice. And I was like, that sticks. I'll keep that.
There you go. Take that one. Well, John, man, it's great having you, brother. We love you, man. I can't recommend everybody out there who's listening to the podcast, man, go check out John's YouTube channel. Great information, especially if you're on from the self-defense side. A lot of real-world content there, and can give you a lot of insight on how things go down in the street, how to protect your asp, like John always says. And we're always honored to have you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Sean.
You know I love you, and I support your ministry, and I love what you're doing. And anytime I can help you, I'd love to.
You're awesome, brother. God bless you.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks, guys, for listening.